Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to another edition of 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Simon Clancy is here with me. Chris is not, because he is floating in from the Atlantic Ocean this morning when we're recording. But he will be here later on this week. Simon, that game yesterday, huge loss. As good a loss as they've had all year, because last week we were talking 7th pick maybe. Now we're talking top 5, and it looks like it's a lock. A top 5 pick is coming your way, Miami Dolphins fans.
Yeah, it was a huge loss. It's difficult, isn't it? Because,
Yes.
excuse me, because the two, like we said before, the two injuries clouded everything because you kind of don't know where he's going to go. And you kind of feel like before he got injured, anything lower than 3 you're out of the running. But the injury, nobody knows at this stage. Will he fall? Will he go in the top 10? Will he fall into the T? Will he fall? Who knows? Even Tua doesn't know if he's, that's why he was asking the question, will I fall out the first round? Who knows? And at some point, the level of risk v reward for the Dolphins, when they find out a bit more, they're going to be like, there's going to come a time where the 4th overall pick or the 3rd overall pick is going to feel like too high because doctors may say, look, it's okay, but there's a long term. We just don't know. We just can't tell. And you're banking the farm on a kid who gets hurt or has got hurt, quite seriously twice in the past couple of years. He's not been hurt more than Justin Herbert along the length of his career, or any other quarterback, I'd imagine, for that matter. But these are the things that people will take away from the back end of his college career. 2 injuries that essentially curtailed the end of 2 seasons for him. So, yeah, it was a bad loss that looked like a win. I mean, I put in the WhatsApp group, it looks like the Dolphins are going to win this. 30 seconds later, there's a safety, and then the Giants return the kick pretty well and then score a touchdown. It's game over pretty much. So, yeah, I thought they played well for the first half. The second half, the offensive line was an absolute car crash again. Fitzpatrick just keeps rolling. The return of Albert Wilson was nice. I think, 5.5 yards per catch up until yesterday. Had a good game yesterday. And look, kudos again to the coaching job. I mean, look, the 4 guys, Lyndon Stevens, Jamal Wiltz, Nate Brooks, and some other fella were the 4 corners yesterday.
Oh, Nick Needham, who's a keeper.
Oh, Nick Needham, of course. Yeah, Nick Needham.
I thought he played well yesterday. He had that unfortunate play where he makes a great play and it turns into a 51-yard touchdown. Yeah, he's on Golden Tate.
With some coaching, and he's going to be a good player, I think.
Yes.
You look at the jump that he's made from preseason, where he looked like we just plucked like a 57-year-old woman from Palm Springs and put her on the field, and she was running around, didn't have a clue what she was doing. To now, he actually looks like an NFL player and like a guy who can significantly contribute. Would you have him as a starter? I don't know, but would you have him as a significant, number 3 corner in terms of playing outside?
Yeah, I think
it
he's
kind of
one
feels
of
like
the
that's
6. He's one of the 6 that get snaps next year, I think.
It feels like it's ascending that way, doesn't it? So
yes,
we shall see.
Yeah, well, the other picks were very interesting. Tannehill let us down, but it really wasn't Tannehill that let us down.
Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't his fault at all.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate pick, which was the most Tannehill thing ever. This man has to be the most unlucky player in the history of the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, they go in for the...
He outplayed Deshaun Watson, Simon.
Totally. They go in for the touchdown, what looks like the touchdown, and when he catches it, it looks like he's going to walk in. Inexplicably manages to, bobble it up into the hands of the defensive player, then into Merciless's hands, and he runs it back sort of 60 yards. And then the field goal gets blocked. Otherwise, they'd have been up 10-0. Then Kenny Stills puts them up 14-0, the Texans. Then Tannehill marches them back. But you look at that throw, the first throw of the game, backed up against the 1-yard line, hits A.J. Brown for 64 yards or whatever it was. And again, couldn't have placed it in his hands any better. He and Brown are really putting up getting together a nice little combination. But unfortunately for him, it feels like
A.J. Brown as advertised.
Yeah, uphill battle it feels like for them to get into the playoffs now. They've got to beat the Saints.
I believe so.
And the Texans, both games on the road. So
yeah, they got to win out.
Unfortunately.
Their path is pretty clear. They got to win out. They got to win the last 2 games. And if they win the last 2 games, very few things have to break their way, but they do have to win the last 2 games. If not, it's a wrap for the Titans. So that pick I think is kind of gone. That one's in the 20s. But the other one is the Steelers, and they lose to the Bills, and that pick now improves into the teens, possibly. So it begs the question. Now there's a big spread between our picks, and that seems inevitable. So there's going to be a decision to make, and the decision I think starts and stops really because with one guy, and that's Chase Young. We talked about him on Saturday when inexplicably he came out and said that he planned, or he didn't necessarily say he planned to, but it looked like he wanted to come back to Ohio State, which was the strangest quote you could find. And then he quickly walked it back. I'm pretty certain. I don't think I'm reporting anything here. Okay. I'm pretty certain he's going to walk it all the way back and will declare. Okay.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it felt like he'd had a couple of sherries when he said that he was going back to Ohio State, and then sobered up and was like, dude, I'm definitely coming out.
Yes. So now that it seems like it's confirmed, no matter how much Pittsburgh loses, but the spread is going to be pretty wide. So there's going to be a pretty big decision to make with that first pick. Is it Chase Young?
I mean, it could be. I think you've got to get in front of the Giants for it to be Chase Young. I think the Giants will take Young. I think Burrow obviously goes number one to the Bengals. Very interesting. Boomer Esiason handing in the Bengals helmet on the CBS set yesterday before the game. And I think Young would go too. Look, I'm having this ongoing discussion. I'm just looking at my social media mentions. I think I've done about 800 replies already today, and I can see there's already 27 new notifications. I'm having this conversation with people about schematics. A lot of fans out there, and thank you if you sent me a tweet, and thank you especially to those people who've been rude. That's really nice. I've sent schematics are incredibly important. And there are. Look, how do you say this without sounding like you're pompous? Because I'm not trying to be pompous. There are people that watch the game on a cursory basis and just love watching the game and don't really get involved in the X's and O's, and it's just a Sunday thing, and they root for their team, but they're not really bothered about 3-4s and zone blitzes and outside zone running games and those sorts of things, and that's absolutely cool. God, sometimes I wish that was me. But schematics play a huge part in how the NFL works, how college football works, but how the NFL works specifically. I had a conversation with Lorenzo Alexander about 18 months ago, and he told me that the biggest fear that free agent players had was being put in a scheme in which they that simply didn't suit their system. But the fact that they played well made coaches and general managers believe that their ability was better than the scheme, i.e. that they played so well that they would fit into any scheme. When Alexander came off that Pro Bowl year 2 or 3 years ago, he was then a free agent. And he said he was so relieved to stay in Sean McDermott's scheme and go back to Buffalo because he knew that was something that he could continue to thrive in. Whereas he could have taken a bigger money deal elsewhere and gone and played in a system that didn't suit his skill set. And then everybody says, well, that's a waste of money. He's a bust. He was a one-year wonder, whatever. And actually, he's carved out quite a nice career for himself. The argument about scheme in Miami is that the Dolphins play a very similar system, the same system, and in fact, probably an even more jacked up system than the New England Patriots do. The Patriots care about all sorts of things, but defensively, the Patriots care about this more than anything. Defensive backs, they care more about defensive backs than they do anything else. That's why they paid the big bucks for Stephon Gilmore. That's why they spent all that time with now the Dolphins secondary coach churning over, looking for those cornerbacks that they find in later rounds who turn into Malcolm Butler, who turn into J.C. Jackson, later rounds and free agents. Excuse me. They've got 3 corners at the moment who are probably, as a tandem, the best 3 corners in football. You also look at Devin McCourty. You've got Jason McCourty. You've got Patrick Chung, who we talk about, who Courtney Fallon told me that the Patriots told her that he was the most important player in that scheme. Patrick Chung, not Carl Van Noy, not anybody else, not Gilmore. Patrick Chung. Okay. Scheme is very important to what they do. So first of all, Belichick / Flores focus on defensive backs more than anything. That's why finding Nick Needham, that's why churning over all these guys at the back end of the season is really important, because they're trying to find some of those gems. Secondly, role players. Role players are ridiculously important in the Patriots defense. Carl Van Noy, ultimate role player. You just have to go Adam Butler, ultimate role player. Just go around and find those role players. Chase Winovich is a role player in that system. He's a pass rushing defensive end. They do not have specific defensive ends, as in the caliber of a Chase Young, to rush the passer. Why? Because I think they have more than 9 different players with 3.5 more sacks this season. They don't have a defensive end with more than 4 sacks this season. Why? Because the system is not predicated on defensive ends bending the arc, rushing wide, sacking the quarterback. That is not how it works.
No.
And that's the difference that fans sometimes can't see, the ones that don't follow X's and O's. We need a defensive end. Chase Young is there. He has to fit. Could Chase Young fit in this system? Potentially, of course he could. He's very athletic. He's big. He's fast. He gets to the quarterback. He's an intelligent guy. He steps to the edge pretty well. I had an argument with Omar Kelly earlier on today about how we wanted Jadeveon Clowney, but why we want Chase Young? They're the same player. They're not the same player. Okay.
No.
The significant thing that they have to say is dreadlocks. That's about the thing they have to say. Jadeveon Clowney lines up as a defensive end. He lines up as an interior defensive lineman. He lines up as a middle linebacker. He lines up as an outside linebacker. Mm-hmm. I'm currently watching in my spare time, because I'm that sad, Chase Young's every single snap that he has played this season. I've gone through 3 games. Chase Young has not played a single snap that I have seen yet rushing from anywhere other than left defensive end or right defensive end. He's never dropped off into coverage. He's never rushed as a linebacker. He's never played as a middle linebacker. He's never rushed from inside. The Dolphins wanted to spend £16 million.
I go even further. If we go by techniques, I've yet to see him in the 3-tech. He's always in the 4A inside of the, just inside of the tackle, and that's as far as he goes. Yeah. And besides that, it's 5, 6, 7, and as far as 9 wide. I've seen him. I saw him against Wisconsin in the 9. So
exactly, and that's great. He's amazing at that. And I'm not saying he couldn't fit in this system. But what you're doing is you're spending the 2nd overall pick on a guy that you do not know whether or not he can be Trey Flowers. And trust me, Trey Flowers is what the Dolphins are looking for. That's why they spent £60 million. Oh, that's why they tried to spend £60 million on Trey Flowers. That's why Matt Patricia spent £80 million a year on Trey Flowers, because of what he does. And people say, oh, Trey Flowers has only had 6.5 sacks this season, or 7.5 sacks this season. He's not a very good guy. That was a terrible free agent sign. It's not at all. Trey Flowers has had a really good season for the Lions.
And he's been impactful. He's been impactful.
Exactly, because he fits the system. He rushes from inside out. When I say that, what I mean is he rushes from a down lineman, interior down lineman position. He rushes from defensive end. He doesn't rush outside all the time. He rushes inside. He stunts, does a lot of stunts. He will drop off into coverage. He will rush from a linebacker position, because that is what they want. And the most important thing that they want from defensive ends, and I've said it a million times on this podcast, is they do not want ends who will rush past the quarterback. Lane discipline is the single most important thing that these defensive ends do, because it allows everybody else, every other faction of that system, to work properly. Watch New England games and tell me how often you see defensive ends rushing past the system. How often do you see them getting pushed out wide by offensive tackles and leaving a massive gap between the right defensive end and the right defensive tackle, for example?
Doesn't happen.
It happens very rarely. And when it did happen at the back end of last season, it happened repeatedly to Adrian Claiborne. And Adrian Claiborne for 3 games was a healthy scratch until he learned the fact that you cannot continue to do that, because what happens is it allows quarterbacks to step up into that area and make passes or run and pick up first downs, because you're vacating a huge area. Chase Young's best thing is getting around the tackle and bending the arc. Why would you try and eliminate what he does best to make him fit a system? Again, I'm not saying we won't draft him. I'm not saying he can't change. But I'm saying, and I know for an absolute fact, because I've had the conversation, that within the Dolphins organization, that will be one of the key things that they end up talking about, is whether or not he is a better fit for our system or a worse fit for our system. And therefore, we're not getting the best out of him. And therefore, he doesn't suit us as much as he would suit the New York Giants or the 49ers. Robert Saleh's system, where they have high ends that rush high, because they have those 3 defensive linemen, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, and Solomon Thomas, who are active going left to right, as well as they are going front and back. That is the most important part of their system. It's not complicated. And you have Fred Warner in behind who hoovers everything up, and Quan Alexander, because he can get sideline to sideline. That is how their system works. But you cannot predict that Chase Young will just slot into the Dolphins system the way that Nick Bosa has slotted into the 49ers system. And this is why it gets quite complicated. And fans are like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Chase Young is an elite. He is. He's a great player. He's a brilliant player. Mm-hmm. But system is vital, and people have to remember that.
Yeah, and when people say, well, if you're a great coach, you make, you don't get players to fit your system. You fit the system to the players.
Exactly.
It doesn't work like that on
Ludicrous.
It doesn't work like that on defense. And it never has worked like that on defense.
Brian Flores said...
Yeah, the guy who was most famous for it was Don Shula, where, Bum Phillips had famously once said that he could take his in and beat yours in, and he could take yours in and beat his in. Well,
40 years ago, brilliant.
Don Shula never told Bill Arnsparger to change his defense.
Yeah.
Okay? They got players to fit Bill Arnsparger's system.
some guy came at me today and said, "Oh, Don Shula changed his system when Dan Marino came in. They changed from a running attack to a passing attack, so it can be done." Well, it can be done, but quarterback is the most important position on the field, not defensive end, for example. That's the first thing. Second thing, why would you scheme Dan Marino to play in a run system when he's a passing quarterback? Therefore, you are doing exactly the same thing as I just mentioned about Chase Young. You are taking away the best thing that he does. Brian Flores, when we traded Laramie Tunsil, said Laramie is an amazing left tackle, but it often feels like we were 10 players plus one. Mm-hmm. The offensive line was 4 players plus one. Laramie, on his island, being brilliant, plus 4 other players working together as a unit. And that's part of the reason. Obviously, the 2 1s and a 2 were a big reason. But the fact that he was at 10 plus 1 or 4 plus 1 was a reason cited in the press conference that Brian Flores said that was part of the reason why we got rid of it, because our unit wasn't as much of a unit as it should have been. If you're doing the same, flip it and play defense. Can you scheme? In your scheme, are you going to play 10 plus 1 or are you going to play 11 together? Surely you want to play 11 together. This scheme is so important to what the Dolphins do, to what the Patriots do, to why the Patriots have won 6 Super Bowls. That has to be taken into consideration. I'm not saying he's not going to be the pick. He very well might be. He's a very good player. But at this stage, you have to look schematically at how he will work. And that's up for debate.
Yes, and it's entirely possible that if you are all in on Chase Young, that you do have to kiss Tua Tagovailoa goodbye because of the spread in our picks. They're just so far apart that they're going to have a decision to make. And if they do take a Chase Young high with one of those, with their top 4 pick, which looks likely now that it could be a top 4 pick, then you're going to have to package a bunch of other stuff to move back up into the teens, because I don't know if you watched Phillip Rivers yesterday, but it's the end. We're here. You know what I mean?
The other thing to think about is that the defensive end position could be sorted out before we get to the draft. We've talked about it before.
That's true.
But, Matthew Judon is a significantly better scheme fit than Chase Young is. And here's something controversial. The Dolphins, I can guarantee you, will believe that Isaiah Simmons is a better scheme fit than Chase Young is. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the 3rd overall pick, but players are picked for scheme for a reason. Mm-hmm. Remember when we drafted Jamal Fletcher? Jamal Fletcher just won the Thorpe Award, had 2 fantastic years at Wisconsin. Okay, Dave Wanstead drafted him essentially to play behind Madison and Surtain, maybe the nickel corner, the 3rd corner, and then graduate into a starter and be
he had the very famous quote where he was asked, you have two All-Pro cornerbacks. Why are you taking Jamal Fletcher? And he said, well, we're in nickel 60% of the time.
Exactly.
And he's going to play nickel for us.
What was the problem with Jamal Fletcher? Jamal Fletcher was a zone cornerback drafted into a press man. I mean, try and find me 2 more press corners over the last 20 years. It's pretty rare. Those guys were, Surtain especially, was up in your face all the time. They were 2 of the elite press corners in the NFL. Jamal Fletcher never played press. No. All of a sudden, he was drafted into a system where he was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So he was a bust, essentially. Didn't play very well. Now he's a coach doing really well. But at the time, he came into the wrong system. And everyone says, "Oh, Jamal Fletcher." He won the Thorpe Award. He was a pretty elite collegiate. I can remember him watching him play for 2 years. He was a pretty elite college defensive back. Somebody else said to me today, "Well, Lamar Jackson." Again, that goes back to what I talked about Dan Marino. Quarterback is the most important position in the league. Okay, and let's not pretend that Greg Roman hadn't already run the system that Lamar Jackson is running, essentially with Colin Kaepernick. But also, let's not forget that Baltimore had a system in which it was run heavy with Gus Edwards and those guys, even before they brought Mark Ingram in, which was heavily predicated on tight ends. And it was a jet motion system anyway. So all they've done really is add more jet motion and use Lamar on RPOs and get him to run the ball, something that obviously Joe Flacco couldn't do.
Yeah, so, and that offensive line in Baltimore has had that same attitude, same disposition for
exactly. And look at the players that
too much.
Bozeman at Alabama, Ronnie Stanley at Notre Dame, Marshall Yanda, the All-Pro, Orlando Brown. That offensive line has been. They are people movers. Do you know what I mean? That system works because every single part of that system, keyword being system, works together. They have function. Hurst, Nick Boyle, Mark Andrews. Do you know what I mean? Replace the running backs. They're three deep who can, each one can do it. They've got the rookie, they've got Gus Edwards, they've got Ingram, they've got Hollywood Brown, they've got the long-haired kid they got from the Saints, the trade, Willie, whatever his name is. That is a system, and it's a system that they were comfortable moving to because Greg Roman understood it and had run it before. So it's not like they've totally torn up the rule book. That's just something that people just don't seem to be able to understand. And again, Chase Young might be a brilliant Miami Dolphin player, and that's all well and good. And I'm not saying he wouldn't be. I'm just saying that at this stage, 6 months away from the draft, we have to think about how he fits, because we've never seen him do the things that they will ask him to do. And if they're asking him to do it, it will take away from the best things that he does. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and as far as the system, and I've heard these, because I touted the run game, that I really like the Miami Dolphin run game, and people say, "What?" And they start laughing at me because we average like negative 1 yard per carry. I don't care about that. I like what they're calling. They're calling a lot of design runs, which is what New England does, which is what Baltimore does, incidentally.
If they had 5 people who could block, then Patrick Laird, he'd have 60, 70, 80 yards a game.
Yes. And design runs, and people, what are you talking about design runs? Well, okay, it's not a zone run. It has nothing to do with what the quarterback is reading. It has to do with 5 guys have an assignment. Your running back has a hole to hit, and everybody else has to be involved in the run game. I like that type of offensive system as far as, calling a run game, because it involves your entire team, and it gets everybody, especially the offensive line, it gets their ears perked up a little bit more, because they know what they're doing. They know who they have to hit. And I don't see no problem with that. On the defensive end, I've seen it. And yes, we're not picking on Omar Kelly here, but, he called
No, not at all.
We like Omar Kelly, and I like him personally. He's a good guy.
Yeah, I do too. He's good to be around. He's good fun.
Okay, but he called the system trash, and I'm sorry. You don't call double nickel blitz and I called it a double nickel blitz. It was actually a double corner blitz. When
They won
Vince
6
Spiegel
Super Bowls with that system.
picked off Eli Manning. Watch what they do. They just don't have the talent, guys. They have maybe 4 or 5 guys that are going to be here next year on that defense and contributing. Okay, Jerome Baker has played well at times. Raekwon McMillan has a role, and he fills it. But besides that, you have Vince Spiegel. You're sprinkling in guys. Godshaw maybe. Wilkins.
But next year you'll see, 300 snaps from Beagle, 265 from Van Ginkel, 450 from Wilkins, 420 from Godshaw. Rowe will play a lot. There'll be another safety. The corners will play a lot, obviously. But on that line, there will be 4, 5, 6 rotating guys, defensive tackles in and out the whole time. That's what they do. Little role players just filling significant little portions of that system.
Yeah, and the way you judge how a staff operates, and they did this in the preseason. In the preseason, they had that live practice where they had referees, and they were doing substitutions. You watch them, and you see if they're timely, and you see if they're correct. Have the Dolphins had any 12-man penalties this year?
Can't think.
I can't think of one. I believe there was one yesterday, but they called timeout and saved it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
I don't think. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But yeah, if you watch them, they work well. Patrick Graham and Brian Flores, they work really well as far as getting guys in and out and getting them in position. They just don't have the horses. They don't have the players.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what, and as far as the run game, again, the offensive line, every day that passes, every game that passes, like maybe you salvage Jesse Davis, and you salvage Jesse Davis because you have to.
Yeah.
It's really hard to replace 5 guys in one off.
I think you salvage Davis. I don't know whether he starts, but I think he sticks around. I think you probably salvage Julian Davenport because as a swing tackle, he's not great, he's not good, but he's not, he's probably better than Jason Fox.
Marcus Webb.
Yeah. DT you probably have to save, although I think he probably needs to, he's got a lot of work to do. I don't think you cut him, but I don't think he starts necessarily. It wouldn't preclude me from signing Andrus Pete, or I think they need to find a left tackle. I need to find a left guard. I think they need to get a centre. They need to get one of those three centres, Biadac, Nick Harris from Washington, or Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma in the draft. I think that's an absolute necessity. I think you could potentially, on a good line, you could get away with Jesse Davis at right guard, and I think you need a right tackle. There are players out there in free agency, to potentially do it, and I think replacing 3, maybe 4 is probably what they're going to have to do. I suspect that I think if you could come into it to the season with a new left tackle, Andres Pete, say, at left guard, Tyler Biadac at centre, Jesse Davis at right guard, a new right tackle, and then have Dieter, the kid that's been playing left, Davenport, and a couple of other younger guys, then I think you'd be all right. But I don't think you can survive. You can't survive with that line. I mean, the fact that Fitzpatrick's made it through to week 15 is quite frankly astonishing.
Yeah, and I've said it before on this show, and the model is the Oakland Raiders, and I understand that the Oakland Raiders are in complete free fall. But at one point they were 6-2, 6-3. Okay.
Well, they were the 6th seed 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. But the Raiders last year gave up something like 58 sacks, had one of the worst offensive lines. They went out and they got 3 starters. Now, to be fair, they had already Colton Miller and they had Rodney Hudson on the roster. Rodney Hudson is a Pro Bowl center. But they went out and they added 3 new starters, Richie Incognito, Gabe Jackson, and Trent Brown. And those 3 guys turned what was a terrible offensive line into a damn good one of the best in the league this year, and leading Josh Jacobs possibly to the Rookie of the Year, if not Kyler Murray gets it. But Josh Jacobs, he's gonna run for about 1,300 yards.
But look at the 49ers, for example. They were the 2nd overall pick last year. Mm-hmm. Look at their offensive line. Joe Staley on one tackle, Mike McGlinchey on the other. But both Staley and McGlinchey missed significant time this season, and yet they started Justin School and Danny Brunskill at both tackle spots. I mean, you can't say barely missed a beat, but they didn't lose a game, or they lost to Seattle without both of them in the game. So one game. But and on the interior, Laken Tomlinson, who was a former first-round pick of the Lions and who left in free agency, Mike Pearson, and Ben Garland. These are kind of unheralded players playing really, really well for this team. Weston Richburg went down with injury last week before. Free agent signing, 2nd-round pick from the Giants. But this is the offensive line, and that running attack, that 4-headed running attack with Breeder, Coleman, Mostert, and Jeff Wilson, plus Kyle Juszczyk, who gets carries, plus the fact they give the ball to any one of those receivers. Bourne, who else they got? Receiver Bourne, Emmanuel Sanders,
and now they have a screen
Debo.
Game going with George Kittle.
And obviously the best tight end in football. I mean, they've made a pretty dramatic turnaround, and that offensive line didn't just come together, overnight, but they were able to just slot in some guys that they knew that, were able to fit. The job that those 2 tackles have done is remarkable, really. And so the turnaround is possible. The question is, can they do it? Can they get the right guys?
Yeah, and where are they going to do it? Are they going to go into free agency because that's going to be really expensive, or are they going to do a half and half type of version?
I think they've got to get their center in the draft. I think they've got one of those 3 first-round picks has got to be a center. I think he's got to be a center. I mean, Kilgore just gets shoved around all over the place. I mean, he got blown up. Blew up? That's terrible English. He got blown up on that 4th down play early in the game. He gets stuck on roller skates. Shaq Calhoun gets stuck on roller skates, and Dieter just can't hold a block.
Yeah, Shaq Calhoun, I think he's just too small.
Yeah.
He's not. If he were a little bit bigger, he'd be an NFL player. Maybe he needs some strength training. But there's a lot to like from Shaq Calhoun in a vacuum. But you can tell he's not an NFL starter as of right now.
Not at the moment.
Dieter has just been bad. There's no sugarcoating.
There's no 2 ways about it. Right.
Michael Dieter has been. I'm not going to say it's a bad pick because you never know if he blossoms next year.
And let's not forget the Pat Flaherty sacked because he didn't think Dieter was ready. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And the biggest mystery this year was Chris Reed, who actually looked the best in practice and never got a run, which was weird. But Yeah, they're going to have to do a complete overhaul. They need at least 3 starters on that
Yeah.
offensive line. And I'm not going to promise that they're going to go from the worst line in the league, and I do believe that this is the worst line in the league,
Yeah.
to the best.
I think it's the
top
worst
5.
team in the league. Talent-wise, it's
Yeah.
the worst team in the league. And therefore that,
Yes.
you look at the Bengals. The Bengals have got 2 less wins than us. But actually, you look at their talent. Where's our Joe Mixon? Where's our Tyler Boyd? Where's our, Billy Price? Where's our, Geno Atkins? Where's our Sam Hubbard? Where's our Carl Lawson? Where's our Jesse
Carlos
Bates?
Dunlap,
Do you know what I mean?
who played well.
Carlos Dunlap, William Jackson. Where are those guys? We don't have those guys on the team. The job that's being done by the coaching staff compared to what's happening in Cincinnati is, where's our Saquon Barkley? Where's our Darius Slayton? I mean, he's on IR, but where's our Evan Ingram? Where's our, all those guys that the Giants, Giants have a better roster than we do. Even look at the secondary without Janoris Jenkins, who they got rid of. Sam Beal was a second round pick in the supplemental draft. D.D. Baker was obviously a first round pick. They got Covington. They all these good looking rookies, young guys, but still Antoine Bethea, still guys that can play and that are significantly better than what we were putting out on the field yesterday.
Yeah, they're going to have to do an overhaul very similar to what the Raiders did, which is about half the roster, about 33 players. What they're trying to do right now is trying to find as many as they can salvage. And I think that there's somewhere up to around 18 to 20 guys that they can salvage that could be roster players. But you're talking about 50% of the roster will be overhauled this offseason. And, in there, they're going to have to overhaul two units, which are the secondary and the offensive line. But, yeah, back to the offensive line. Yeah, they need 2 new tackles. They need a center. And Davis, I gotta say, I never understood the tackle experiment, and then it looked okay at right tackle. But Jesse Davis, you gotta say, he's been a disappointment as a tackle this year. He's an NFL guard. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. And Dieter, back to Dieter, he's been bad. So they don't have much to work with on that offensive line, but they're gonna have to get going pretty fast. In the
Joe Thuney is the other guy, the Patriots left guard. He's the perfect fit because obviously he knows the system, and he's a Chad O'Shea. He's a Chad O'Shea guy. I mean, he knows what to do in that system, and I think you bring him in with what could be a rookie left tackle, could be the Jones kid out of Houston, could be Austin Jackson at USC, could be whoever. Maybe they go into free agency, maybe they bring in Costanzo or somewhere, but I doubt it. But that's kind of what they. That's kind of what they need. And then obviously the emphasis is then on a rookie left tackle, which you ideally don't want. But if you've got somebody like, you don't want a rookie left tackle and Michael Dieter next to him. You want a 26-year-old Andres Pete who's been an all-pro. You want a Joe Thuney who's won Super Bowls, has been a consistent starter for the Patriots and has, knows the system. You do not want a line that's got a rookie left tackle, a second-year player, Michael Dieter, who got benched for a street free agent, and a rookie center in Tyler Biadasz or Creed Humphrey or whatever. You don't want that at all. You need somebody in that of that threesome who is going to be, a little bit experienced and actually knows what they're fucking doing.
Yeah. No, and it also is a complete shame that the Eagles have this habit of pissing off their all-world center and then their all-world right tackle, and then making up with both of them by giving them long-term extensions. Like, that just pisses me off. Like, if you're going to stay mad at a guy, stay mad at a guy so we could take him from you in the offseason. You know what I mean?
I suspect the Dolphins will do a lot of trading as well. I don't necessarily think they'll use all those picks on draft picks. I think they'll probably trade for some players as well. They'll start moving around some sort of, backups who they think could develop in.
Yeah, steal a little something from the Miami Heat playbook, which is look for the disgruntled star and just take them. You know? I thought that Lane Johnson could have been that guy, but evidently they solved all their problems, in a pretty short while and gave him an extension, so he's out. But who knows who else could be available? You never know. And Trent Williams is still floating out there this offseason.
Yeah, Trent Williams. I mean, look, Trent Williams is out there. There's some interesting free agent tackles, There's even interesting guys. The kid at Philadelphia, Vitae, starting in the Super Bowl. Yeah. He's played all over the line. There's the kid that we sent 29 players down to the Bayou to try and sign Lyle Collins and ended up not signing with us. He's a free agent. all sorts of, the kid that's currently blocking Jack Conklin for Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. Those guys are out there. You could easily see them move something for Trent Williams.
Yes.
And
what's interesting about the Cowboys especially is that it was rumored. Well, it wasn't rumored. It was flat out reported that they're cutting Byron Jones loose and attempting to re-sign La'el Collins, which is interesting to say the least, because I think one guy has been better than the other. I think La'el Collins is an average right tackle maybe in the league.
Yeah, let's say you give up.
Byron Jones is kind of an elite corner.
Yeah, let's say you give up a third and a fifth rounder for Trent Williams, or a third and a fourth for Trent Williams. You have Trent. All of a sudden, Trent Williams, Joe Thuney, Tyler Biadasz, Jesse Davis, and a right tackle that could be Lucas Niang of TCU, or do you know what I mean? Somebody. All of a sudden, whoa, our offensive line's kicking a little bit.
Yeah, it's looking.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's better.
Yeah,
so
much better.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've given you a pretty meaty episode. We're very forward-looking in this episode. All right? I promise we will have Chris later on this week. And then next week we will have one show. So we're warning you ahead of time because, it's the Christmas holiday. So we will have one show next week. We should have another one later on this week. But till then.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.